Good afternoon, everyone. And this is Kevin Vita with NOCO, and I'm helping USDOT put on this month's Talking Tim webinar. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, go ahead and put them in the chat box, and we will get to them and answer all of the questions to the presenters at the end of all of the presentations today. This webinar is being recorded, unfortunately for me, and all of the slides, PDF versions of the slides and the recording will be available on the NOCO website in the near future. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to Jim Ostrich, our host for this month. Jim.
Thank you, Kevin. Let's see why my video is not, oh, yes, it is. Thank you. Okay, again, thank you for joining us on behalf of the U.S. Department of Transportation, the Federal Highway Administration TIM Program Office, my colleagues Paul Joden, Joe Tebow, and I, and our contract team, thank you for joining us. And as always, we thank Kevin and Adam Hops and the team at the National Operations Center of Excellence for hosting this webinar. And just FYI, this is our 43rd webinar in over 2 years. And it's just amazing how far we've come and how thankful we are to all of you for your contributions and progress that you're making to expand traffic incident management, TIM good practices across this land. So important to saving lives and reducing congestion, et cetera, et cetera. So today we have another exciting agenda, our webinar. Paul Joden and I, primarily myself, Paul's with us, but Paul's obviously at liberty to chime in as needed, followed by Lieutenant Robert Mills, retired from Louisiana State Police, will be presenting on the Louisiana DOT's TIM program and training. And pay close attention, everyone, because as you recall from last month, I believe we announced that Louisiana made a huge jump thanks to Lieutenant Mills' findings on training statistics, primarily law enforcement officers that had received the training but had not been reported. Next will be followed by Jason Dicembre from Maryland State Highway Administration, Maryland DOT, who will be presenting on predicting incident duration and queuing for better real-time response. And we're also going to have some good discussion, share with you about Crash Responder Safety Week that's coming up 3 weeks here real soon, fast approaching. Wayne Taylor from North Carolina, he'll present his plan, and Wayne is the statewide coordinator for North Carolina. We'll have LaShawn J. Ford from Nevada DOT present on their plans for CRSW, and I'll be talking a little bit about our social media kit, toolkit, and other materials. Next. So Monday in particular, November 14th, if you haven't registered already, please do so for the national kickoff, the virtual national kickoff webinar for CRSW. It's going to be another really cool webinar with proclamation signings, all the high-level executives from all the major associations, NHTSA, Federal Highway, and Motor Carrier. We're also going to have responder testimonials. And we'll talk more about The introduction on the 14th, Monday the 14th, the beginning of the week, the 14th through the 18th, Mondays during this webinar, the actual theme for Monday and each day of the week. Next slide. So real quick, the TIM training as of October the 10th, you can see here, almost like 620,000 responders trained. This continues to be one of our hallmark or cornerstone projects, as all of you know, the National TIM training. We'll talk more about this throughout the webinar, I'm sure, but as we speak, it's worth noting that there's actually a train to trainer, that virtual TIM train to trainer course that's being conducted as we speak with approximately 50 participants from across the country. And there's another one being planned for November. Just FYI, if you haven't received the announcement, let Paul, Joe, or myself know. We'll make sure you get it. And keep pushing the training, please. And the reason being, next slide, we're up to 38 fatalities. Let's pause here a second, because as you all know, I can get emotional about this, and we should all remember our brothers and sisters that have paid the ultimate sacrifice. This is the number as of I believe it's October 10th, early October. It's just unbelievable. But remember, what you're doing is saving lives, as our colleague Joe Tebow always says, and we have to increase the training numbers. We've got to utilize all the tools in our toolkit in terms of technologies, whether it's UAS or video sharing or safety service patrols, CAT integration, responder to vehicle alerts, all the different technologies and tools that we've been talking about through the Everyday Counts Next Gen TIM initiative project, and everything else, your conferences, just so many things that we can say contribute to reducing these fatalities and the injuries that we really don't know much about. Next slide. Here's the national map with the goal. I cut out the other maps just to save some time, a little bit of time here, because I knew I would be long-winded, especially on the line of duty deaths slide. But again, you're doing great work. We just have to shine the light now, especially with CRSW coming up, to educate the public and do everything we can through social media and all the other strategies that we'll talk more about here shortly. Yeah, we still have a long way to go to train this 1.1 million, really closer to 2 million responders that need to receive this training. Next slide. Here's the progress since the last report on September 26th. You can see here, we've been having some pretty heated discussions internally at FHWA, Paul, Joe, and I, and others. You know, what do we need to do to help you get the training moving again, you know, in much greater numbers, much greater numbers. One of the ways is, like I said, to help you graduate other trainers into your state's cadre of TIM trainers is one way. But as I said, pay attention to Lieutenant Mills's presentation in particular for what he recently discovered and reported on, which put his state way over their 100, their population of responders to be trained. I think they're, 160% or something like that. It's amazing. And yes, Millie, you should be proud. Texas leading the way and has been. Massachusetts, you can see these here all the way through all 50 states, DC and Puerto Rico. Next slide. This is the top 10, little closer view. Next slide, Kevin. Thank you. Yeah. Next slide. Okay. So with that, I am going to introduce again Jason Dicembre with the Maryland. Hold on a minute. You're jumping over to Louisiana. Is it Jason first, or are these just the cover slides, Kevin?
I believe it was Robert next with Louisiana.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Thank you. So as I said, Robert Mills, retired, Lieutenant Robert Mills, retired from the Louisiana State Police, is a TIM and training coordinator for the Louisiana DOT ITS section, the Traffic Management Center and Safety Service Patrol function. He was contracted, picked up right after retirement by Serco North America. He retired, as I said, as a lieutenant from LSP. And after 29 years of service to the citizens of Louisiana, he served multiple positions, including executive officer at the Training Academy, where he was the lead TIM trainer. Lieutenant Mills is a graduate of Southeastern Louisiana University and LSU's law enforcement training program. And with that, I'd like to welcome again our dear friend, Lieutenant Robert Mills.
Well, Jim, I'm kind of teary that you would build me up so much. Not any pressure on me or anything, but you'll receive a care package from me. How does that sound?
Anything, just a wave is good.
Well,
thank you, sir.
Number one, I just want to thank the panelists that's mentioned, that's working with me on this. And I just want to let everybody know that just beyond state police, there's always the opportunity to serve the public. And I'll do that as long as God willing, and it puts a breath in me. But on July 1st of this year, Serco North America signed a contract with the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development to not only man, but manage the traffic management centers under the ITS department, the highway department. So not only does Serco have the Safety Service Patrol, but they also have the TMC as well. And I think that works hand in hand when you have both of those sections working together and they already know each other and they talk to each other. So it's going to help us collect a lot of data. So the first thing that we did whenever we moved in is I wanted to see where we were as far as our training status goes, because what happens more than likely than not is that people in government have a tendency to move from section to section, and we lose some of that historical perspective. So we wanted to take a look and see just where we stood as far as inventory. Next slide. So the areas that I want to kind of highlight in this brief presentation is that I had some historical knowledge about where the TIM program originated from before we received the national model in 2012. So a lot of kudos actually went to the Senate Transportation Committee with the Louisiana legislature, which governed how police officers are receiving the training. And that first step was to have a course requirement for the certification of police officers. They attend traffic incident management in order to get their post certificate. And then that was in 2007, 2008, and then 2009 was when they put that law in place. And then you had the Federal Highway Train the Trainer courses that were introduced in 2013 and 2014, which put our first instructors on the road to putting the training out. And then these other options we're going to talk about is the training rosters and reporting, and our revitalization and restructuring efforts, and what are our outreach efforts. So the next slide. So when I looked at the numbers that Kate sends out and started delving into the Excel spreadsheet, not so much the graphics, I kept seeing that we kind of flatlined in a couple of areas. And knowing in 2008, we were approached by Senator Joe McPherson of the Senate Transportation Committee, and he reached out to the lieutenant colonel over the patrol section of state police, which at that time was Ralph Mitchell. And Ralph got in touch with me at the academy, wanted us to produce some material to go out to all the police officers in the state that could be issued in a roll call training methodology. So at the academy, we put together a 38-minute video that was mass produced by the video section and also proofed. And we sent that to every police agency in the state. Then at the same time, on the back end, Senator Joe McPherson had a law passed stating in January 1st, 2009, every police officer had to be certified in traffic incident management. So where this actual research kind of came into being is if Senator McPherson had not entered that into law, we would have had a tough time going back and trying to recapture numbers. So we reached out to 28 post-certified academies after July 1st to try and figure out where their instructors were. Of those that responded, we found that most of those instructors didn't even reside within their own agency for whichever academy. For example, East Baton Rouge Parish does their training through CARTA. Some of their instructors handle that in other parts of the state. You have people that come from state police and actually teach the course. So knowing that at least 2 people per troop within the troops and state police had instructors, then that kind of gives us a starting point. So the second wave was to reach out to LCLE, and my hat's off to Mr. Paul there, who actually was able to go back and query the system and tell us how many police officers were actually certified by the state. So we knew that if we ran those numbers of certification, that would bring up our numbers that showed pretty much that they had flatlined. So the second reach out was to the Fire and Emergency Training Academy. One of the instructors there, TK Duvall, who I taught with for many years, and Mr. Ken Fowler, who's the Assistant Director of Training. And they were able to query their files and show that some of their records didn't match what was coming up, I think, with what Kate had received, via the SharePoint. And then we had a new Department of Health Director of EMS Services, Ms. Susan, who is a great asset. I'm going to be speaking to her a lot more to see if anybody had any instructor training records, because there were some people in the EMS world that we certified as instructors, but we didn't find any training rosters on that. Next slide. So this is the slide taken straight from Miss Katie's file, just to show that pretty much we had flatlined when going back and looking over the years, that we would only have small incremental, anywhere from 150 to maybe 200 people per year in the top 2 law enforcement, fire and rescue services being trained. And I knew that simply wasn't the case. Towing and recovery, we stayed pretty much even in those areas with 1 to 2 or more per year. And then the other disciplines, such as people with parish government, those are flatlined as well. So I knew that top figure, and I knew the fire and rescue were going to be slightly underreported. Next slide. So what we did, and if you hit the next button a couple of times, it's going to have some red letters pop up so we can show what our numbers actually were. 16,632 police officers were certified since 2014. So that's a big difference. And knowing that it's more than that, because January 1, 2009, we actually started training police officers. So we had a lot more than 6,632, but we need a starting point. So we used 2014 because that was when we had the first 2 instructor classes. And it was important because those first 2 instructor classes were actually going out and teaching people that were police officers, fire and rescue, tornado recovery at that time. So we knew that over those period of instructing, that the new people coming in to the law enforcement or fire and rescue, they were going to catch that training, but we needed to push training out to the people that were already certified. And over time, it's been since 2009, it's well over 12 years since we've actually started. We knew there was going to phase out because people like myself were retiring. So everybody coming into the sector was going to be exposed to it. So we broke down exactly how many fire departments there were in the state, 550 plus. And when you break those down further, 323 of those departments are volunteer, 178 were combination, which means they have at least one paid firefighter there, and the rest are volunteers. Then you have 50 that are career. So just to give you some example, I sent a survey out just to see if I could get a response. And right as of today, I haven't received less than 10%. But right now, they're about 65% of their membership need training, and about 133, which is about 35%, have the training. 254 need the training. So it tells me that we still need to work in the fire department side of the house. And then the other contact was to the 72 ambulance companies that are certified in the state. So I reached out to 3 of the largest employers, which would be Acadian Ambulance, Acadian EMS, Baton Rouge EMS, and New Orleans EMS. And we've recently pushed the 4-hour web-based training just to give them some knowledge of what to expect. What we still want to grow in that area, we still want to push out. So just those 3 areas alone, it drove our numbers way up, but we know there's still more work to do. So that kind of helps us to drive what our next step is. Next slide. So what we're doing right now is we're reviewing the current train the trainer instructor roster. And you'll have to excuse me, Paul, I left out the W in FHWA again, so you can hit me with a wet noodle. We're going to look and see just how many of those, and I think there are over 300 that have either retired or been transferred out, or they haven't had any teachings. And we're going to find out who our core people are, and we're going to place them in a position where they can teach more, and then solicit the active instructors to see who would be a good fit. We're going to recreate our regional instructor network. Instead of having, for example, 100 to 200 instructors out there simply doing what their job is push out the best practices. If we have a regional instructor, he can kind of, or she can kind of look at that and see where our numbers are going, where's our need. And that way they can report back that, hey, we had 6 or 7 classes this week. They all got placed into SharePoint, which is what our ultimate goal is. We want to make sure that people are submitting the training into the SharePoint. And we're going to probably get with the ITS, with the contract manager, with ITS, with Mr. Ryan, and see how he wants to create a database of scanned rosters, just so that we can fall back on having those. And then we're going to progress even more in 2023 by creating temp teams. Once we've pushed out the fact that there's more need for traffic incident management classes, we're going to start building temp teams within the 8 regions, the planning and development regions of the state. And just by the top of the head, I know it's Baton Rouge, New Orleans, North Shore, Lafayette, Lake Charles, Alexandria, Shreveport, and Monroe, because those are highly metro areas. Next slide. And they also coincide with those 8 planning and development districts, everywhere from New Orleans up to Monroe. So that's kind of a great way for us to do outreach, because we're going to be attending every single one of those safety coalition meetings within those 8 planning and developmental districts, because that's the outreach we need. Next slide. So when we're forming these temp teams, we want to make sure that we're asking the local planning commission members, the people that are in those planning districts, to come sit in on those. The highway department in those respective areas, which districts, the parish and city officials, and private sector transportation businesses, because those are people that utilize that highway all the time. And then we're going to make sure that they're being conducted quarterly. They're going to be addressing after action reviews for major incidents, infrastructure, construction areas struck by, and near misses. And we're going to try and see if we can't come up with some way to see if we can build a database, a reportable database, whether it be forms through Microsoft or anything, to see just where we have the near misses, because I don't believe that we're actually capturing those. Because I know in my 29 years, I've had at least 4 near misses where you've been hit by a hubcap or something to that effect. So that'll tell us just exactly where our hot spots are, because if law enforcement and first responders, EMS workers, if all these people are not getting hit, the next best thing to know is where the near miss is occurring and see if we can do an after action report and see how we can make those better. Next. So when we're generating the outreach and we're generating the interest, we're going to attack those areas and sit with those agencies that are within the areas that we have the Safety Service Patrol. And those pretty much mirror almost the 8 planning districts. We have a heavy patrol in the Baton Rouge metro area, the New Orleans and North Shore area, Lake Charles, Alexandria, and Shreveport. And we're going to make sure that everybody along that route, whether they be the PD or the sheriff's office or public works, any of those people we're going to sit down and talk to, and we're going to tell them what the traffic management center really does. And we'll actually invite them to come on site to see what the operators in that TMC. And those TMC operators, God bless them, because they have a tough enough job as it is, and they're constantly moving eyeballs and entering information. And I'm just extremely proud of the work that they do. The secondary outreach, we're going to expand out of the Safety Service Patrol routes that are in design, and we're going to talk to those agencies and partners that provide arterial support, which would be the US and major state highways that feed into those interstate routes. Next slide. So some of the assessment practicum that we're going to be talking about is what stakeholders are going to be participating in each TIM in each region. Are there regular meetings taking place? If not, how can we press that? Make sure that we're inviting guest speakers presenting. It doesn't have to be just law enforcement. It could also be local public officials that help fund infrastructure, which is a big plus, because if we get them involved in this, it just makes the crash responders' life a whole lot better, knowing that there's some top-down support. And then if we're performing these meetings, we have to make sure to incorporate what our TMC monthly and quarterly reports performance indicators are. And it's the basic 3 performance that we've always talked about since day one, the roadway clearance time, incident clearance time, or their secondary events that need to be captured. And if there is no TMC within that regional planning area, then how will the data be collected? Well, I can tell you right now that LSU does an excellent job in their crash data research team in providing or a statewide with a breakout, where I noticed when I looked yesterday at their website, it showed statewide that the average time to clear a lane is about 41 minutes, which is not too bad. But that's taking the low end and the high end and giving us an average. But we want to see breakouts for each region, how we can do to make that better. Next slide. So biannual reviews that we want to start meeting is we want to know how many teams we're forming, how many disciplines are involved, is each team developing a needs assessment, and have the stakeholders themselves participate in Sharp 2 training. If not, then that's a perfect opportunity for us to sit down and give those classes as well. And everything that we do with building these teams, we're going to make sure to use the Federal Highway Administration self-assessment tool. And that's a new field for Louisiana, because we have pretty much an ad hoc meeting. I know that I've held several after action meetings in the Troop L area where I was from in my home troop for interstate closures longer than 2.5 to 3 hours. So it's very important that we're doing these and we're referring to that TIM assessment tool to make ourselves better. Next slide. And some of the future initiatives, we're going to be working with professionals to encourage them to include annual and biannual refresher training, because once you put someone through the training once, that training evolves over time. So since Louisiana started from a simple 38-minute DVD to in version 3 of Sharp, just because they went through it with a 38-minute DVD trainer, it's evolved. So how are we catching people every time we make an evolution? And the only way to ask for that is to make sure they're including some sort of TIM training in a refresher setting. We want to make sure that we push the fact that almost needs to be mandated, because right now it's seen as an elective for in-service, which means they're going to reach out and grab something else. Maybe that's something that could be approached on the legislative side of the House. What are the probabilities of making the 4-hour web course a part of in-service? There's some other discussion points. If we can take the best information and push it out And that's what people in departments are looking for, is how they can train their departments better and quicker without giving them that extra time if they're shorthanded. Maybe that possibility of doing a 4-hour service or web-based would be a great idea. And then we're going to target other people that need training. For example, the parish government, the OEP offices, DPW offices. And then we're going to reach out to the 911 centers, and also towing and recovery, because I can tell you kudos to Jonas Martin, who's now a captain with the state police. Jonas took some initiative in the Troop A area in Baton Rouge and had some mandatory training for towing and recovery professionals, which I think is an outstanding job. But we need to push that out in other areas of the state. And then the next gen initiatives are coming up next. So Louisiana is kind of, I want to say slightly behind on pushing next gen, but we are pretty good with making sure that the information is being taught to first responders, but we still have room to grow. Next slide. And if y'all have any questions at all, this is going to be my contact information. Just please copy it, whatever you need to do. If you have any questions at all, I'll be following in the chat room. And being that I'm no longer a police officer, I don't have all the answers anymore. So other than that, I appreciate the time and thank you for being attentive. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Robert. Phenomenal presentation. I hope and pray. Well, I wish we had more time, because I think you hit on so many areas here that our audience and so many others that aren't with us today could I guess adopt or put into practice. But one thing I want to say is, it's a lot of times, and Robert, you tell me if this is not true. I mean, you knew a lot of folks. Okay, you had a little bit of an advantage there. But the fact of the matter is, you reached out, you picked up the phone, you emailed, you contacted all these different entities, these players, these stakeholders in your state to find out about the training numbers. And it's led to so much more that you are now launching in the state of Louisiana that's going to continue to bottom line save lives, Robert. And so our hat goes off to you. And if anybody on this call, if anybody's interested, you see the numbers here, reach out to Robert, because we need more. We know the numbers are being underreported. Paul, Joe, and I, our team, Katie, Belmore, we all know the numbers are not being fully reported, but in some cases it's many, many thousands of numbers potentially that are out there that in any given state, could boost their numbers and be in the same situation that you discovered, Robert. So thanks again, sir. Thanks for your service as well. God bless. Okay, next up is Jason Dicembre. Jason is the director of the Office of Transportation, Mobility, and Operations at Maryland DOT, State Highway Administration. The office's mission is to improve the safety and reliability of Maryland's highway system through technology and interagency partnerships. The office includes MDOT's Coordinated Highways Action Response Team program, CHART program, and the agency's traffic management centers, traffic operations centers, and the planning and operation of the TSMO systems, TSMO standing for Transportation Systems Management and Operations. And with that, welcome, Jason, and take it over.
Thank you, Jim, and glad to be with everyone this afternoon. And I guess, if we could simplify kind of what we're trying to get at today with this presentation, it's really how do we better use data for real-time operations. This is a big topic, not only here in State Highway at MDOT, but obviously with our EDC6 initiatives and everything, we're really trying to figure out how, from an operational standpoint, we can be a little bit less reactive and a little bit more proactive in how we're making some decisions. And when we talk about what some of those decisions are, you can go to the next slide, Kevin. The business need here, there are obviously some tactical decisions that happen on an incident scene like the one you see there to your right. But when we talk about mitigating the impact of an incident and how we can alert motorists and take a more, again, proactive stance there, do I need to call in additional resources for a lane closure? How far back should I be messaging on my overhead message signs? Do I need to notify up my chain of command? When are we going to post on social media and any other outlet that we're going to notify the public? And again, are there other types of notifications I need to make? Are there other adjustments maybe to signal timing or other TISMO systems that I need to interact with, and when do I do that? And when we really look at when we're going to do that on the next slide, we look at incident duration and we look at the incident impact. And by incident impact, I mean the queue length on the primary roadway and then the potential for the spillover on the secondary roadways. To the right, what you'll see is in Maryland, we call them FITM plans, freeway incident traffic management plans. In your state, you might call them something different, but the concept being that we've done some engineering work and operational conversations, forums with our local partners to figure out if the roadway is closed between a certain segment, where are we going to send traffic? We've looked at bridge clearance heights, any weird turnabouts or anything that might prevent a commercial vehicle from being able to make a turn. But the problem is that all of these plans are built on a full roadway closure, or we're going to have a lot of equipment out there. We're going to have shop resources from our maintenance teams, full attenuated trucks, detour signs, and the gamut to move traffic as efficiently as we can. But there's a problem. Next slide. We know that the public is not waiting for a full roadway closure before they make their decisions. The screenshot you see below is a screenshot from the Waze traffic view tool. And for those that might not be familiar with it, which is available through the Waze through Cities partnership, what I like about it is you can build your travel routes, and then along that segment, if there's a major delay that Waze would reroute people, the purple line that hopefully you can see there on your screen is where Waze along that segment would be routing traffic. So we can kind of see what they're doing. The roadway was not closed for an incident in this case. There was just heavy congestion, and Waze was saying, I'm going to send motorists a different way. So when it comes back to making our decisions, is there a way for us to have better data to make some of those tactical decisions from the TMC or anything that would look at the impact, right? Should I be detouring traffic at an earlier point? Where are they going? Should I be adjusting signals? How can I do that? But what if? Next slide. What if we could do that? So this is a screen from our current ATMS system, which calculates the current queue using probe vehicle data. The operator could enter their own number if they had it from a different source. And there's also a place for us to estimate the hours to clear. And right now, that's a very manual process. We're talking to responders on the scene and getting their input, and they're using their experience and conversation with fire and police responders on the scene to figure out how long do we think this is going to be. And it's exactly what you think. Well, the tow company's telling us it's going to be about an hour for them to get there. Investigation is going to take a half an hour, and then it's probably going to take us about another half an hour. So we're at 2.5 hours before we can get a lane open or get the roadway open. So we realize there's got to be a better way, right? There's got to be a better way to crunch something. We're just going to keep relying on boots on the ground, and that's fine. But we probably have the same problem you do in your agencies, and that's turnover. So that's great to rely on that experience until that experience is not who's there, and you've got a lot of new team members that might not know from their experience, because they have no experience, how this is going to go. So we realized, next slide, we have data going back to 2001, at least here in our chart program. And data always tells a story. We all know that. So simple on this chart, right? What story is this data telling me? If I look at the middle of this chart and I look at the congestion events, we call them. So this is the number of times an operator opened an event for the purpose of putting congestion messages out on the overhead signs. We can see that starts to drop considerably in the 2008 year, and then to the point in 2020, we didn't do it at all. What story is that? Well, that's about the time we started implementing travel time on our overhead message signs. So we did not activate those overhead message signs because we were relying on probe data to automatically generate those messages, and to the point that now it's so institutionalized that that's what we rely on solely, unless it's an incident message up for a crash. Along with the bare bones data we're collecting, like all TMCs, we're recording a lot of data on what lanes are blocked, who's there, timeframes of all this. Can we mine it? So what we did is we reached out to the University of Maryland's Civil Engineering School on several research projects to try to do just that. Next slide. So phase one, we said, well, let's just do a test corridor. Let's just look at whatever we think the highest incident volume corridor would be. We picked Maryland's I-95 corridor. For those that aren't familiar, it goes from the Maryland-Virginia line all the way up to Delaware. And it's not just Maryland State Highway that operates some of that, it's also the Maryland Transportation Authority. Luckily, we share the same ATMS, so we have all the same data. And so we asked the University of Maryland to see, can you calculate the event duration probability based on our ATMS data, not using any crash reports from the police, but using solely our ATMS data. And they found through their first phase that they could, with about 85 to 90% confidence on that corridor. Then we expanded to include our 495 Capitol Beltway around Washington, D.C., our 695 Beltway around Baltimore, and then our I-70 corridor, which connects our far western Maryland, where it connects to the PA Turnpike, to that Baltimore Beltway area. And similar results, around that 85, 80% confidence score. And then the third phase, we said, well, this is great, but if we're going to institutionalize this, we can't have it necessarily be by particular roadway. It really needs to be either by roadway class or clusters of roadways. How do we make it network wide, roadway network wide? And so that was the third phase, which we are just finishing up right now as we speak. But along with that was the second piece, which is not just how long is the incident going to last, but can we predict the duration of that incident along with the queue? And again, we found that we're pretty sure that we can do that pretty accurately. Next slide. How do they go about doing that? Well, first they look at what are some of the common data elements within our TMC data that really were telling as to how long this incident would last. And you can see them listed there. Number of responders and who's there exactly. First responder on scene, was it the fire department, the police, was it our CHART program, our SSP TIM unit? The vehicle status, overturned, did it lose its load? What really is that vehicle? How is it situated on the roadway? Wet, dry, snowy, pavement conditions, lane blockages, what number of lanes are blocked, what operations center is handling it, and then the time that the time of day that the incident is occurring. Next slide. And then they looked at what elements are the most transferable. So what mattered the most as far as incident to incident? What could we say were common factors, or the most common factors in telling how long this is going to last? I found it interesting from an operations perspective that the number one criteria was the number of responders, not the vehicle status or the number of lanes taken, which is what I would have thought was. But when I thought about it, and when you dive deeper, number of responders can be a clear indicator of how complex that incident is. That we have an overturned tanker with fuel leaking. I'm going to need a lot more responders than I'm going to need for that single property damage crash. So that was pretty revealing that it wasn't related primarily to the status of the vehicle. I thought overturned or lost load or something would be the highest indicator, but that was not the case. And I know it's hard to see on this graph, but if you look at the orange bar, that's the highest of that subset. So just taking the number of responders, the total number, regardless of the type, if you will, on that is the highest indicator. But then there's number of SSP chart units as the second largest factor, number of tow services on scene, and you can keep going down. So this presentation will be available to you afterwards. You can drill down and kind of look at some of those other factors. But after that, we did another test set. So this is, again, phase 3. We're trying to expand to the other roadway systems. Next slide. And we looked at whether or not we had the same success rate. So this was looking at all the incidents along I-70 as part of this phase 3 set. We trained the data model, well, not we, University of Maryland, trained the data set to our 2016 and 2018 TMC data. And you can see what it predicted there. When we ran it against the 2019 data, you can see pretty successful, still in that 80% range. And you tell me in operations that I've got an 80% chance of being right, I'm probably going to pull the trigger on that decision. So next was, okay, we have this data, we think we can do it. How do we get it into the operator's hands to start making some decisions, on this? So they created a tool for us. Next slide. And right now, this is a standalone tool that the operator would have to use, separate from the ATMS. And there is a slight problem with that, and that's that they're going to have to input some of the data they were already inputting in the ATMS. And we'll walk through that here in a second. So you have the option to either start with the incident clearance time prediction, or you can jump right to the queue. There's a reason for that, and we'll talk about that in a second. Next slide. So first, the operator starts putting in all the data we have. So what number of lanes are closed, what roadway is it on, what's the vehicle count involved, what's the status of the vehicle, overturn, lost load, etc., what responders are on scene, and who was the first on scene. Next slide. And then after that, it will spit out a calculation based on all that data. So in this case, you can see that it's estimating an average clearance time of 45 minutes. And that's what we would use as our decision point. 45 minutes is what we're hearing this incident's going to last. So for example, in Maryland, we don't call out a full maintenance shop after hours unless it's going to be at least a hour and a half, 2-hour closure. So 45 minutes, I'm not going to notify maintenance shops about it after hours. Our chart units will handle it on their own. But what I also like is you can see the ranges. So 60% of incidents that match this criteria will clear within 10-30 minutes, 70% within 10-35 minutes, and the large majority, 80% of them, will clear between 5 and 50 minutes. So again, even though your median is 45, it's unlikely that it's going to last past 50 minutes. But now I got to figure out, okay, so I know I'm not going to call resources, or I don't need more resources from home, but now I got to worry about managing the traffic management side of it. What is the impact of this incident to the roadway system? How far back is my delay going to get? Where can I predict people will start detouring off? Next slide. We again can jump right from that screen to the queue prediction, and you can either use real-time detector data if you have it, or if you don't have real-time detector data, you can use archive data. Next slide. And depending on what you pick, again, with that out real time, you can use counts, AADT, or you could use real-time speed. Next slide. So 3 shots here. It might be hard to see. If you're using the real-time detector data, you will put in the current flow rate of an upstream segment from the incident, and then the incident duration that you had previously calculated. Or the reason why you could jump right to that queue is if we know that there's a corridor, and we haven't found this yet, but if we know there's a corridor that is very, very low, it's not that 80%, it's always going to fall maybe in that 60% reliability, and there's something that for this incident, you trust your responder on scene, that estimate, more than you do that data. For whatever reason, you can use your own estimate here. So you could type in whatever your estimated duration of that incident is here. Total number of open lanes, total number of blocked lanes, real-time detector data, you put your vehicles per hour, and then for the speed, you'd put your current upstream speeds, and then, is it greater than 800 vehicles per hour roadway or not? Next slide. And it will spit out for you the estimated queue. And again, your percentage is there of the likelihood that it'll reach that particular queue duration, queue length. And for this particular incident, it was not a real one. I was doing a test incident, but this was that same 45-minute duration that I showed a moment ago, and I use speed, not average counts, just because from an operator standpoint, that is easier for them to see. We have some detectors, but we also have the probe data we can use. There is a link though inside the tool. That was on a previous slide. I failed to point out that you could click the link to get to State Highways record of data for the average counts for that if you wanted to use that. But the operators tend to use this just because they can more easily see this right from the ATMS and transfer the data over. So what are we really trying to get at here? What does this do for the operator? Next slide. So what we decided to do for the operator, I think I'm gonna be missing, was there a slide? Forget. So there's a slide missing. So what would happen here in the ATMS is the operator would see what we are calling an incident severity score. So this is a mean average calculated behind the scenes where we've given a weight, if you will, to different factors of the event. What roadway is it on? What time of day is it? And part of that is, yep, it's calculating through some of the same data, that incident duration. So after they see that incident duration, it calculates it, the operator will get a severity score, and at a certain point, if the severity score reaches above a certain number, the operator gets a pop-up, gets an alert that tells them, we think this has reached the level where you need to take further action, you need to retime signals, you need to consider opening your PTSU if you have one, based on that data. It goes back to that change of mindset. And we're still calling it a FHWA plan. It says we think you'd execute this FHWA plan. But FHWA plans no longer mean a total roadway closure. A FHWA plan is any way to manage traffic along that freeway. So the idea is to give a decision support tool to the operator that is data-based. And again, phase 4, if you will be to automate this inside the ATMS. So the operator is not going to be bouncing back and forth between systems, and that pop-up will be more, I'll say, real time. The operator doesn't have to wait for the operator to put in that calculation. So with that, that's a quick overview of how we're trying to use data from our ATMS and our TMC to improve our decision making and real-time operations. Jim?
Jason, wonderful. Can't say enough great things about Maryland. You guys have always been a leader. You're still a leader, and these tools for those. Well, quick question for you, Jason. The dashboard piece of this, or in general, how much of this is public facing?
Great question. So none of it yet. So it's not proprietary, but we don't publish it quite yet. We have discussed, Jim, putting that estimated duration to our website as one of our published fields, so the public can see what we're estimating it's going to be. The only concern with it, in full transparency and discussion among my peers here, is that the public latches onto it. We'd have to do some education that number could change through the course of the event, right? So as those factors are being inputted, that number will go up and down. So it's a snapshot in time for when that motorist looks at that website, hopefully before they're departing their house and not looking at a website while they're driving.
Yeah. And earlier today, we were on a call with Florida Next Gen Tim, EDC 6 Next Gen Tim call with Florida, and we had some similar discussion about their dashboard and technology data tools that they use. And in your case in Maryland is I guess the secretary is well aware of this, your transportation secretary, but is the governor aware?
The governor is not aware of these predictive tools. No, he is aware of the general concept of taking a more proactive approach, and the statewide operations center here of one of our 4 traffic management centers being more interactive and active traffic management of the signal system in particular. But all these other TISMO active traffic management systems we're putting out, but not the nitty gritty here of how we're doing it.
Yeah. No, I understand. Well, regardless, Jason, kudos to you and the team. We really appreciate all your work you're doing, and it just underscores having data and justifying everything through data-driven analysis, like what you've done here, is just where all states should go eventually. And Paul, Joe, and I and our team, as you guys know, through EDC4, crowdsourcing, and even now with EDC6, trying to promote the data collection and data, but most importantly, the use of the data to show benefits, et cetera. So thanks again, Jason. So next up, we have Wayne Taylor from North Carolina DOT. Wayne has been the state TIM coordinator for North Carolina for the past 5 years, contracted through Kimley-Horn engineers. He is a retired he retired as a major with 30 years of service with the North Carolina State Highway Patrol, where he served as director of field operations. He's also served in the U.S. Marine Corps and the U.S. State Marshal's Service. So thank you for your service, Wayne, and take it away.
Thank you, Jim. I think Jason tried to steal my slide. Everybody wants that TIM track there, so. Yeah.
That's right.
So I'll talk through some of the activities that North Carolina has planned to commemorate Crash Responder Safety Week. The image that's being displayed on the screen right now is obviously a picture of our TIM training and development track, and is intended to give you an idea of where we will be filming a video that we're planning to produce in support of Crash Responder Safety Week. And I'll provide some additional detail or information regarding that video shoot near the end of the presentation. Next slide. These are the activities that we have planned for November 14 through 18. In regard to the social media outreach, after several recent struck bys here in North Carolina, we partnered with the North Carolina State Highway Patrol in mid-August to bring a renewed awareness to our move over law. We had an IMAT responder who is our Safety Service Patrol responders who was assisting a stranded motorist, and obviously he was struck, as well as a trooper who was investigating a crash, and they both participated in an interview describing their struck by incident. We included this video of the crash responder vehicles and ran a clip on our social media platforms, as well as within our local media markets. We plan to use that video again in a very similar way, and we'll follow up with the patrol and see if they will post it to their social media platform so that we can have an even broader audience and a greater reach. The next item we have is Governor's Proclamation. This is either our second or third year requesting and receiving a proclamation from the governor of North Carolina. Not sure how long it would take in other states to process the proclamation, but here in North Carolina, due to a lot of staffing shortages, it takes them about 120 days to process the request. So I say that to say, if you're looking to do something like that in your state, I suggest reaching out now and reaching out directly to your governor's office if you have a contact there, and see if they can expedite proclamation for your state and for Crash Responder Week. The next item is local television newspaper stories. As I mentioned earlier, we plan to use the IMAT responder trooper video. They were very deliberate in speaking about their incident, Both of them sustained minor injuries, but it made a real impact to folks that were watching the videos. So we will definitely use that again. As well, we'll use some of our other videos that we've used in previous years to kind of spread the message as well. Messages on DMS, our message boards, obviously when they're not in use to warn motorists of incidents, we have a few canned move over messages that we will display throughout the week. And then finally, the press release and web presence. I'm not sure how many folks that are on this webinar have seen the video that North Carolina released a number of years ago, probably 2008, 2009, where a car came crashing through an office to simulate cars speeding through a work zone. So for 2022, Crash Responder Week, we plan to dust it off, refresh the concept for today's time, and shoot a video that will again feature a staged office setting on our freeway section of the of our track, which was the first slide that was displayed. We'll have all of our responder agencies that respond or potentially respond to the scene of an incident to drive through that area where the offices will be set up. And we'll also have office personnel kind of milling around like they would in a normal office setting to make it a little bit more realistic. Obviously, we haven't fully developed our tagline yet, but I can assure you it will be a good one. And if you go to the next slide, Kevin. We have about 5 different scenarios that we're going to kind of play with and see which one we want to use for this video shoot. And the first being, as you see there on the scene, the 2 green rectangles depict the office that will be set up, and then you have all the responder vehicles lined up, and they will travel through that area, simulating, again, an office. Will have our partitions or something out there in all likelihood. Desk will be set up, and we'll have folks seated behind the desk, and then have just some folks milling around as they would in an office setting. We'll have our IMAP units, Safety Service Patrol, we'll have the Highway Patrol, EMS, local PD, fire, towing, utilities, any and everybody that would potentially respond to a crash or incident scene. Then we will have those folks participate in this video. Next slide. This is another scenario that we're planning to kind of walk through again to see which one is going to be the best for the video, to get our best depiction of what we want to convey to the public. So this one is a taper that's set up at the scene of an incident. The responders will drive close to the taper, near where the 2 desks will be located. Next slide, please. That's a third scenario where the responders will actually drive through the taper to get to the scene of the incident. Again, the 2 desks set up top right of the screen there. Next scenario or next slide. And then this is another scenario where the responders drive behind the desk. Obviously, safety is going to be first and foremost. It's not going to be very high speed, but we do want to get the message out there and convey it in a way that the motorists and the public will fully appreciate. Now, next slide. And that's just what we'll have all of our responders staged so we can get a really good video and photo of all responders who will be participating in a video shoot. And then obviously, as part of our response this year, we will use some of the press releases that have been posted in the past by FHWA, and I think Jim is going to talk through some of those today. So we will definitely pull some of those and tailor those to the needs of North Carolina. So we will steal some of that from FHWA. And as a final point, to highlight how irresponsible and careless drivers are in regard to responder safety. Last week, one of our local departments, Knightdale Police Department, sponsored a move over campaign in commemoration of Officer Ryan Hayworth, who was killed in the line of duty in October 2021. They invited all of the agencies surrounding their jurisdiction. I think there was a total of about 30 officers on scene, including our IMAP responders. And within 2 hours, they issued 133 move over violations. So that's just how egregious things are here, not only in North Carolina, but I'm sure throughout the country. And I think that's going to do it for me, Jim.
Outstanding, Wayne. Thank you. You as well should be proud. The track looks wonderful, and I know you guys are going to make good use of it. And I hope Paul, Joe, and I can get down there soon, which I think that will happen. And again, the citizens of North Carolina are well served by you, Wayne, and your team and all the responder community. That's for sure. So thanks again for presenting today and everything you do, sir.
Yes, sir. December 6th, 7th. We'd love to have you down here. We have a group coming in to participate some of the southern states, but we'd love to have you and Paul and Jim.
Thank you. Thank
Tim.
you.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All righty.
Kevin, would you mind if I share the screen, please?
Okay, we ready?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Vishali. Next up is LaShawn Ford. LaShawn is the Senior ITS Project Manager in the Traffic Operations Division at Nevada DOT, where he contributes to the implementation and management of the ITS systems program, including active traffic management. He is a graduate of the University of Nevada with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. LaShawn is a professional engineer, and with that, take it away, LaShawn. Welcome.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, like you said, LaShawn Ford, and traffic operations. I'm the project manager for our TIM program. Today, I'll just be really briefly taking you through some of the activities that we have going on here in Nevada for Crash Responder Safety Week and TIM. And go ahead, next slide. So here's a quick summary of some of the activities we're doing. So we are working on a governor proclamation. We did that for the first time in 2021. In that 2021 proclamation, we highlighted the death of a tower that happened here in Nevada. It was the first time in several years we had anything like that happen. So it's highly disappointing. So it's great to be able to honor him and his family in that proclamation. This year, we'll be highlighting the national first responder fatalities. So We'll be working on issuing that. Hasn't been officially approved by the governor's office, but they're pretty quick turnaround. We submitted it a few weeks ago, so should be out pretty soon. We're also doing a press release, so our PIO is kind of overseeing that effort. They'll send it out to all the media. They also do social media pushes and things like that. And we're getting a quote from Department of Public Safety, Nevada DPS, so we'll have that quote in that press release as well. Then for the first time, we are holding a training during Crash Responder Safety Week. This year it's only one. In the future, I hope to, have each of our coalitions maybe put on a training during the week, but this year we'll be facilitating a training on November 16th in Las Vegas. And then DMS, I oversee our DMS scheduling for our PSAs. So we will be doing a move over law related message running throughout the week. Go ahead, next slide. So this didn't happen on Crash Responder Safety Week, but it happens close enough that I'm going to count it. And I wanted to talk about it as our, each year Nevada holds a traffic safety summit. And our TIM coalition puts on a crash demonstration. Basically, this is to demonstrate TIM best practices and the roles of first responders at crash scenes. So we do a realistic incident and we have agency leads from each of the first responder agencies as their agency kind of starts doing whatever they're doing. Let's say NHP starts their DUI investigation. If we're doing a DUI incident, that agency lead will take the mic and kind of describe what the considerations are and what the first responders in their area are doing on the scene. So it's really cool. It's really educational for the crowd. We have traffic safety professionals and media at that event. And it's a good training opportunity for some of the new firefighters to be able to kind of cut up vehicles and things like that in front of a crowd. So really great program we have going on there. Go ahead, next slide. So next we have our TIM video that we developed a few years ago. We run this every year during Crash Responder Safety Week. We've tried to get it in our DMVs. We have been unsuccessful there so far, but we do put it out on social media. So I'm going to go ahead and let this video play. And yeah, we did this with Nevada DPS. Just got to get the sound going. Sorry, whoever's doing the PowerPoint, did you get the sound working? Alrighty.
For those
There
who
we go.
respond for you, the ones that are there for you. In times of crisis, they are there. Those who respond for you, the ones that are there for you. In times of crisis, they are there to keep you calm, safe, and protected. Say thank you by giving them a break. Slow down and move over. It's the law. Lives are on the line.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So my next slide is just my contact information. So that's all I had. I just wanted to highlight those few things. So.
For you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, LaShawn. Excellent work. Keep it up. Our messaging, your messaging in Nevada, as I said, everyone is playing a part. And I've been tracking a little bit some of the questions in the chat pod. I want to thank everyone who's jumped in to respond. But before we close things out in about 12 minutes or so, we wanted to go over again CRSW that's coming up. You can see here the primary theme for this year is Respect Our Roadside Heroes, and it using the hashtag that you see there, Roadside Heroes, for social media. We are heavily engaged, I will tell you, this year, and we're super excited because engage with our public affairs. I should finish my thought. Federal Highway Public Affairs, because this will be the first time in over 2 years that we're actually going to be holding an event at headquarters. Vishali, I didn't see the rest of the slides here, to be honest with you, but anyway, I'll take these as, you know, as they come. I'll say what I was going to say in a second. I mentioned already, we're going to have focus on stories and testimonials from responders who were on the scene to help traveling public talk about what happened from their perspective. There's a campaign gallery of pre-recorded responder testimonials explaining what it feels like to work roadside, which all of us on this webinar today know the danger, the peril, I like to say, the risk, the peril that we are in driving on our nation's roadways, but even more scary when you pull over on the side of the road, you're involved in a crash, and cars and trucks are moving by you, and with so many of the distracted and drunken, otherwise impaired drivers that are killing us, our responders and citizens. Well, next slide, Vishali. I'm going to move on if you don't mind. Unless Vishali, do you want to say something real quick? I should give you the benefit. You put these slides together.
Happy to do so. I just want to bring to everyone's attention that while the FHWA site does not yet have the updated CRSW toolkit, our wonderful friends at NOCO already have this up, and we encourage you to visit it. I'll put the link in the window. This is what the site looks like. If you just go to transportation ops /TIM/CRSW, it tells you the hashtag. It is Roadside Heroes. It gives you the link for the national webinar. And then, of course, is this toolkit where you have customizable article you can put in your newsletter for your local agency. There's a video script if you want your executive to record a CRSW video message. A draft flyer is up there. And then most importantly, the day of the week calendar. And you can click on any specific day. So for example, Monday, what could I do on Monday? And it tells you, if you're an organization, here are some of the things you can do. And if you're a responder, here are some of the things you can do. And there's a lot of resources at the bottom. And so whatever day of the week that you guys are on, you can use this to basically collaborate with everyone across the nation to have a similar message by day of week. And so just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that. And secondly, as your governor's proclamations come to fruition, please send them to Jim Ostrich. Feel free to CC me. We want to compile these and show them off during the National Crash Responder Safety Week kickoff webinar on Monday the 14th. So please do let us know. The blue states are the ones that we've heard will likely have a proclamation, and hopefully some of the gray states might also turn blue this year, and if not, definitely targeting that for next year. And finally, wanted to give you a sneak peek. This is a sneak peek. This is the 2022 Crash Responder Safety Week flyer. Hopefully it will be up in the next week or two on the FHWA CRSW website. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Jim.
Thanks, Vishali. And did we post the URL
Yeah,
for?
I'm gonna put that
Okay.
in the chat in 1 second.
Great. So folks, take advantage of this. Our extraordinary contractor and person, Vishali Shah, that you just heard from, is just a tremendous asset to the TIM program and works very hard on all these products and materials for sure. So thank you, Vishali, very much. And I do want to touch on what I was saying is that we're doing an event at headquarters, USD headquarters, US DOT headquarters in Washington, D.C. The middle of the week, Wednesday, November 16th. If you're in the vicinity of Washington, D.C., feel free to come and join us. You won't have to go into, you won't have to get the security pass to attend outdoors. But Maryland, DC, Virginia, public safety, police, fire, rescue, response disciplines, towing, recovery, everyone will be represented there. We're going to have an event outside, approximately an hour or two. And some of the executive level officials from Federal Highway, NHTSA, Federal Motor Carrier will be there and make some remarks, as well as from all the major associations from police, fire, rescue, EMS, towing and recovery, public works, transportation, AASHTO, et cetera. So we're really excited to get back together in person and shine a light on the good practices of all of you. And as I said, our brothers and sisters across this land, because what we're doing here, without question, just know it and believe it, because we are always saving lives with everything that we do. And with that, I want to ask my colleague and dear friend, Paul Joden. Paul, you still there?
Yes, sir. I am still here, and sorry, I'm in my recliner because I have a bad knee and I need to keep my foot elevated. So,
No worries, brother.
yeah. So, Jim, I have a couple of thoughts. It's hard for me to keep quiet for 90 minutes. You know that, right? So, but I did a good job, and. But I wanted just a few comments on the training in particular. The Louisiana experience that we heard from. One of the ways that Lieutenant Mills was able to find the time to be able to do this investigation and do what he's going to need to do is that Louisiana found the funds to get contractor support, right? We all, as a state police lieutenant, he probably would never have had the time to do that. So, with all the personnel issues and the problems we have with personnel, getting that contractor support, it's not that much money within USDOT, within state departments of transportation. I was one for many, many years. You can find a small amount of money to have someone help you with that. Also, there was in the chat, Jim, there was someone asked about how does Massachusetts and Georgia and what was the other state do so well. I can tell you, in Massachusetts, they went and they actually went to the statewide, police chiefs conferences and fire chiefs conferences, and they've really worked hard, but they went to the senior managers and convinced them that the training needs to happen. And I think the other one was Texas. Jim, you know more about that than me, but they made it a requirement in Texas for police and fire to take the training. So, nothing like a good old fashioned requirement to get the numbers up. And then in Georgia, I know there was a comment in how they divided the state up. In Georgia, they also had some sort of online requirement or something for EMS to do the training, as well as engaging EMS. And into the future, you're going to hear more about EMS because we're looking to engage more and more with EMS as part of the national, the US DOT Highways National Safety Plan. So, you know, there's some other stuff in here, Jim, but I don't want to take up your time, but that's certainly what came to mind relative to all the presentations are awesome. We love all the people, all our close friends that were here today, and I appreciate you letting me talk for the first time in 90 minutes. So,
Hey, glad you joined us, Paul, and thanks for chiming in as usual. By the way, Rashali, do we have a slide for next month's Talking Tim, or has that not been developed yet?
No, it was shown at the very beginning. I'd be happy to bring it up again. Give me one.
Oh, please.
well, next month we're not doing a Talking Tim, right? We're going to do.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's right. It conflicts with CRSW.
Right. We want to encourage folks to you know, use the allotted time for the Talking Tim webinar that you'd normally attend in November, and attend the webinar event that we're having on November 14th.
Yes, thanks, Paul and Vishali. And they can register for the virtual webinar on the website that you posted in the chat pod, right, Vishali?
Exactly. I did put it in the chat pod, and I will try to repost that just in case you missed it the first time. So
Yes. And thank you all for staying with us. We were right up there at 100 for the majority of the webinar. Please share the webinar information with your colleagues in your discipline and outside your discipline. Paul, Joe, and I always appreciate any ideas or suggestions that you may have for presentations. And don't forget to email us if you know, we're always available. Just, you know, email us. Of course, you can call us, but it's always best to send us an email if you have any suggestions. I saw a couple there from Dr. Harden from Arizona EMS. Yeah, we're always open to any of your suggestions, comments, thoughts. So with that, again, I want to thank all our presenters. Thank Kevin Vida and the National Operations Center of Excellence. Thank Vishali Shah, and thank all of you for what you do. Just remember, like I said, you're saving lives. You're saving lives, and it's so important that we keep fighting this good fight and educate the public about all the good things that traffic incident management brings to the quality of our lives, and that is life itself. So with that, God bless and stay safe. Never take your eyes off traffic. See you next time.